Hey, guess what? Here it is, sponsored by MGM National Harbor. For the latest in Washington sports, visit MGM National Harbor and experience a sports fans paradise. We're talking about the DC Sports Huddle with Rob Woodfork, Dave Preston, and George Wallace. Hot, bothered, and annoyed. That can only mean one thing. He's back from mandatory minicamp. You know, of all the marketing slogans I've heard, that's the best one yet. Hot, bothered, and annoyed.
I'm trying to get that T-shirt.
Mandatory minicamp. No Terry McLaurin. What the heck's going on? Do we care? Should we be encouraged by a bunch of guys running around? What are you sensing?
Well, I think the bunch of guys running around. The McLaurin thing, I have a feeling that based on what Ron Rivera said today, that we're getting closer and closer. He said they've been talking extensively the last week or so, and basically he's like, it's a matter of time before something gets done. He reiterated again, he said, quote, "We are not trading Terry," which means they're going to trade him. But he said it's closer and closer to getting done, and hopefully it will get done in the next whatever it is before training camp. He got 6 weeks now. If it's not done by tonight for tomorrow's final day of minicamp, which I don't think it's going to be. But he did say Terry's subject to the rules as far as being fined for missing mandatory minicamp. I'm sure they'll work that out. It's fine. He's training elsewhere. As far as missing reps with the quarterback, I would be concerned, but Terry's now a third year in it. He's put up the numbers he has with 18 different quarterbacks, and Carson Wentz is a professional. I mean, we've seen that just in the last few weeks I've been out there, just how different it is between him and Taylor Heineke. Not only on the field, guys, but standing next to him. I mean, as far as the size difference between the two. But so I think of any wide receiver, I think it's not going to be that much of a detriment that he's missing this time. They will have 6 weeks and through August or whatever to get ramped up as far as on the same page. Terry knows the playbook. Carson knows it. So I'm not too worried about that. But, of course it's a little concern that your star wideout, your captain's missing mandatory minicamp. Last year, remember, Jonathan Allen's deal was getting worked on, but he was at the mandatory stuff, and we didn't get that announcement until right before training camp. So, but it sounds like everybody seems to be on the same page. Rivera said again today, he says, nothing is contentious at all, and we are not trading Terry, so expect something to get done here in the near future.
And that's a good exclamation mark. I believe Terry McLaurin is the most important player to this Washington Commanders team. They have to keep him because of that. He has been a hit on and off the field from day one and through a very chaotic period, as we still are going through a chaotic period. To me, Terry McLaurin's even more valuable to Washington than Lamar Jackson is up north to Baltimore. We'll go to you next, Dave Preston.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. Here's a guy who is the most important player on the offense. He's led the team in receptions and receiving yards each of his 3 years with the 8 different quarterbacks that have been started by this franchise. He's led the team in touchdown catches 2 of those 3 years, finished second, I think, the other year. I am confident that from everything that George has told us out at mandatory minicamp, where I think there might be mandatory perspiration as well, but I'm confident that a deal will be done out there, but I wish that Terry McLaurin, the captain, had been able to show up, even if he's not doing anything. At least he's in the same meeting rooms. At least he's on the field. At least he has a chance to see Carson Wentz on the field and see him go through his steps. Because when you look at this offense, it's not a great offense. This is not Eric Coryell we're talking about. This is not the on turf. They need every little edge they can get in order to be a productive offense in 2022. And I think if Terry McLaurin is in mandatory minicamp, not doing anything, but at least watching, that is just that little extra that might help them, because they're going to, for all we know, this offense might run aground this fall. So they need every little advantage they can get heading up into 2022 with the new quarterback.
Rob Woodfork.
Well, if we're comparing the two, and we are, between him and Lamar Jackson, I think the main thing that you have to look at is the organizations that they play for. And I think with Baltimore, if they, for some reason, moved on from Lamar Jackson, they have a better chance at finding their way back to the playoffs, back to the Super Bowl than Washington does. Now, Dave Johnson sort of alluded to this leading into this, and that is where Washington is with all of the controversies off the field, with all of the things that are swirling around this franchise. You need a player like a Terry McLaurin to be the positive face of the change that you want to be. And in and Washington is unique in the sense that the change that they want to be is basically going back to the future, because they would love to have the Gibbs 1.0 era all over again. And I was actually thinking about this before the show. In the last 20 years, how many players have come through Washington that you think would be prominent players and have prominent roles on those Gibbs teams that went to Super Bowls and won championships? And I think if you make that list, Terry McLaurin, if he's not at the top of that list, he's very near the top of that list. And they didn't have, I mean, think about it. The Hogs had a bunch of undrafted guys. You had a bunch of quarterbacks that were either late round picks or afterthoughts that came from other teams. So who better than a guy who was a third round pick you thought was just going to be a special teamer who blossoms into this great receiver? I think he needs to be the face of this franchise, especially when you're still looking for a quarterback. So based on where they are and where they want to be, that's far more important a signing than Lamar Jackson in Baltimore.
And again, I know what he's done on the field, but part of my thinking of Terry McLaurin goes back to hearing him talk in his rookie season.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought this guy is mature beyond his years, and what he's accomplished during the period of time he's accomplished it in. It doesn't bother me that he's going through a contract thing.
And also it's kind of a diva position. I mean, or at least it has been in recent years.
Right.
And he reminds you of an Art Monk in the sense that he cuts against that grain. He's not a guy who's out there trash talking or me, or give me more passes my way and all this. Like he's been on the straight and narrow. He's pretty quiet. He's a good quote. And to your point, yeah, that's absolutely valuable for a franchise like this now.
All right, as we talk at June 15th, other feel-good reasons for the Commanders. I will start with just I still believe in Ron Rivera, and I think his latest situation where Jack Del Rio was fined $100,000 for distracting the team. It's not worth debating his tweet or what was said. The point is, Ron Rivera again shows he's very much in charge of this franchise and is committed to the success of this franchise and wants nothing to get in the way, especially stuff that has nothing to do with football. Other thoughts on that, or other reasons why we should feel good or bad on June 15th, 2022, with guys running around in pants, shorts?
He did. And today they had alumni out there at practice. And, look, God bless the alumni. They want to come out on a hot 90-degree day and watch minicamp and, get a barbecue lunch. But that's what they did. There weren't a ton of them out there, but Rivera made the point afterwards to talk to him. He, along with Jason Wright and Martin Mayhew. And of course, Mayhew, played here and had success in Super Bowl. So he gets it. But Rivera made a point of saying that he wants those guys to know, because look, he said, it's tough. We go from, the Redskins to the Commanders. He goes, I get it. He goes, it was an iconic franchise, and he wants the alumni to understand where they're going now. And he wants the current players to understand from these guys what it was like here. So he said they are making a very, very conscious effort to get these guys, bring them back, to have them involved. And Ron Rivera said that's a big part of it. He understands the tradition. He understands the history. He mentioned it multiple times when he was introduced about not only coaching here, but playing here back at RFK and playing for the Bears and all this. So I think to Dave's point about believing Rivera, I think that was just hearing him say that, I think should make, fans feel pretty good. Like he understands what the tradition was and how important it is to have those guys around. Now you have, the alumni and to Rob's point before too, how many of these other guys really are household names now? I mean, for what they really do much on the field, other than Gibbs 2.0 and of course, 2012, Robert Griffin III was not there, by the way, in case you were wondering, so
he's on ESPN. He's doing bigger things.
How about Hainsworth? Was Hainsworth in the house?
No, he was doing the conditioning test. He was going to join him, but he was still doing the conditioning test. But anyway, get off on that. But it was positive. It was a positive thing.
Robert Griffin III was at a book signing, by the way. But that's
right.
my point.
Where's that book?
Yeah, why we need to have Ron Rivera taking the action. No distractions. The team that's on the field has to be the sanity bubble, because there's news today that Dan Snyder is not going to go to Capitol Hill. To me, is bananas. We never hear from this guy, except when he wears a beard looking like a backup quarterback, as we had the name change announcement a couple months ago. But after 20 some years of owning the franchise he allegedly loves so much, He needs to show some leadership and stand up and say, if there's nothing to hide, then there's nothing to hide, and get in front of the folks at Capitol Hill and explain what the hell is going on. Your fans that you've taken money from for 20 plus years deserve that explanation. So that amplifies my point why I believe in Ron Rivera, because that's Sanity Island on that field where George Wallace was hot, bothered, and annoyed.
He's gonna be on his yacht.
First of all, we're not going to talk bad about the neck beard, because Andrew Luck proved that a starting quarterback can rock the neck beard. That's number one. Number two, Snyder, this is who he is. He knows.
I know, but he needs to change now.
Right, and that's who he is. So it's like right now the onus is on, because he's had 23 years to show us who he is.
Right.
The onus is now on the NFL. Are you better than this guy, or are you going to continue to let him represent you?
By the way, we're going to get up. I know we're getting off the topic, but imagine this. First of all, you knew Dan wasn't going to show up to that thing.
No, I knew it.
No, I know.
But
it was a coin flip as to whether Goodell would show. Right.
But if Goodell shows and stands up there and says, I'm going to take responsibility, I'm taking your questions, I think this is serious. And they say, what about Dan Snyder? I can't speak for Dan Snyder. I don't know. So that wouldn't be a good look for Dan either. If Goodell.
Yeah, but it just
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dave. I'm sorry.
No,
Preston.
Dave, I think you made Dan Snyder's year by saying that he looked like a backup quarterback. To say that he's looked like a football player, that's his dream. That's why he bought this franchise in the first place, so he could sit at the cool kids table at lunch, and you're helping him do so.
All right, let me qualify the statement. Looks like a backup quarterback on an arena football team. All right, did I qualify?
You're still making his day. You're still making his day.
Yeah, but I mean, it drives me, as a tax-paying citizen, who the hell does he think he is to say, "Oh, Capitol Hill, I'm busy that night."
That's the difference between
and then on top of that, said he's busy with team business.
Which he can't do.
He's not supposed to be doing that. Like,
he's going to be on his yacht.
Right.
He's going to be on his yacht.
Go ahead.
He's going to be in France on his yacht. That's where he's going to be.
Is that what he said, Rob? He's doing team business?
There was from what I understand, and I read it secondhand, but what I read was that there's a 4-page letter that his lawyer sent to the committee. And one of the reasons why he's not showing, they said, is because he's got Commanders team business.
All right.
That can't be moved. And I'm just
that
like,
lawyer,
way to announce that you're not really away.
Yeah.
Well, that lawyer should be fired then, because now he should have just gotten Dan Snyder in trouble. Somebody should say to Commissioner Goodell, fine him.
But that's what I'm saying. But the NFL doesn't care, because otherwise the NFL would have gotten on his case for being there for the big unveiling of the new team name and the uniforms and so forth. I mean, his face was out there front and center for that. So they don't care. They don't care, and they need to care, because this is a terrible, terrible look for the league at a time where they don't need it because of everything that's unfolding with this Deshaun Watson case. I mean, just egg on its face, egg on its face, egg on its face, and it's all self-inflicted wounds for the most part.
But come September, this fall,
we'll be exactly
watching.
Exactly.
It'll
be a good game in the Thursday night opener, and then everybody will move on.
All going to move on. Yeah.
No, you can't fight the Kremlin. I mean, the NFL. I'm sorry. All right. Let's, my blood pressure's up, so we got to go to the audible at the line of scrimmage. Dave Preston, you're working
this is fun. Let's keep going with this.
Yeah,
you know how much chromo material we got here today?
I want to see how far Dave. By the way, before we go, real quick, before we go, talk about Rivera and to be the right person for this. What could you just imagine what it would be like and how Rivera would feel if he actually, for the first time in 3 years since he's been here, could actually focus and coach football? Because he hasn't done that yet.
Yeah.
Hasn't been able to do that yet.
That's why I think we should celebrate him, because if he's gone through this name change stuff and yet he's been nothing to me but the model of leadership and professionalism. And
he had cancer.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Right.
He had cancer. And to me, that's probably why he fined Jack Del Rio, because he's probably thinking, goodness sakes, now it's coming from within. Again, I'm not even going to get into what Jack Del Rio said, but come on, can you just coach the defense and put your Twitter account down? That's got to be what he's thinking. I mean, do you think Mike Ditka will like players tweeting? Back in the
Well,
day.
Gosh, Ditka would
To
blow
be
up.
fair, Mike Ditka is basically saying all the same stuff that Delrio's saying these days.
I know
Yeah.
the minute that
Not the best example.
No,
Not
no.
the best example.
All right.
But in his prime, no. To Dave's point, though, in Ditka's prime, before
Right.
dementia CTE wrecked him, like he would not have tolerated
right,
that.
right. No, it was the minute I said it, I realized
Yeah.
the road I'd gone. My point was he would probably not have been a social media guy, but anyway. All right, audible at the line of scrimmage. Dave Preston, what do you got going? You got Nat Stillbuck, all that kind of stuff. But the U.S. Open, you write 24/7, and so what's on your agenda? Or what's your audible?
Well, we're going to call two audibles at the line, just depending on what the defense gives us. First off, some preview activity on the U.S. Open golf, which tees off Thursday morning in Brookline at the Country Club, a country club so old that they actually just call it the Country Club. A lot of focus has been surrounding this Saudi-backed Live Tour. Phil Mickelson, Dustin Johnson, Bryson DeChambeau among those moving to this breakaway startup tour. And instead of talking about the course, instead of talking about how Justin Thomas is on a roll or Rory McIlroy won up in Canada this past year, everybody's talking about the tour. I think we've got some great golf ahead. This is a classic U.S. Open course where I think maybe -2 or -3 is the winning score. I like Rory McIlroy. He's playing very well. Also, Justin Thomas is playing well. Don't sleep on Max Homa. He won the Wells Fargo Championship last month, played very well at the PGA Championship. So I think he might be a dark horse, so to speak, in this thing. And my other audible at the line, it's a shame that Stephen Strasburg gets shut down. Hopefully it's just a bump in the road as opposed to the end of the road for 2022, because unfortunately he wasn't able to last 5 innings, and then he had discomfort 2 days later. So it's unfortunate with the Nationals that they have so much money tied up into Patrick Corbin, who's taken his lumps the last couple of years. Stephen Strasburg, who's only tossed 31 1/3 innings since the World Series. I think he threw 35 innings during that playoff run. So it's a shame for the Nationals, because if Strasburg is even okay, not great, but just okay, and able to start every 5th day, people are going to the ballpark every 5th day because he is appointment viewing on the TV and at the ballpark as well. So hope that they can get Strasburg back on the field at some point in time this summer, but it's a shame that this has been the last 2+ years we've seen.
All right, George, hot bothered and annoyed. Wallace, your audible.
No, I feel a lot better now after what we've just done the last 20 minutes. So thank you all for that. First of all, you can only call one audible for one play at the line of scrimmage. So I'm going to go with Strasburg as well.
Yeah, and I didn't hear Omaha or anything.
Nothing.
Hey.
Look, the Strasburg thing, it's you talk about the rebuild, and if Mike Rizzo really says this team is going to be competitive next year, which is what he has said, 2023, they need some sort of Strasburg for this rebuild to kind of anchor this rotation. I'm afraid that he's done. I'm afraid that he's really done. You hope not, but it just the work he's trying to get back to this, and he lasts the 5 innings, and this is the rib whatever stress rib whatever they're calling it. You worry that he's done, and you can't go back and talk about the contract of Strasburg, Rendon. Rendon didn't want to be here. You reward Strasburg for winning the World Series. He got you a World Series. He's your MVP. You cannot even think about that. Of course, it's a shame. Now, I said you go back and look at it. He gave the guy all his money, but and he's one of their guys. The still talk about that opening night. The anniversary just came up the other day. So unfortunately, he's shut down again. I don't see him pitching again this year, but you hope that it's that he's not done, and this team, that he can actually help this team take that next step into competitiveness, which Mike Rizzo says could be next year.
He's made 8 starts in the last 3 seasons. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that tells me he's done. And actually Davey Martinez said, basically they don't regret the contract or whatever. He deserves it. And that's not wrong. But I think what's lost in sort of handicapping this is that when you give a guy a contract, it's not supposed to be a reward for what he used to do. It's supposed to be, this is what we expect of you moving forward. Yeah. So they made a bad bet that he was going to be basically like Max Scherzer, and he was going to be a really effective player deep into his 30s. And it was just a bad bet because he was hurt all the time, even when he was young. So, this was always this was always a bad bet, and it's one that that they're going to regret unless they can get enough out of him that they can flip him for some trade compensation that helps them in the rebuild. But right now they're just saddled with a bad contract, and I hope it doesn't cost them too many of their younger players that could plausibly be around in 5 years when they expect to be back in the World Series conversation.
All right, good use.
And to Rob's point there briefly, I think it's not the money. Yes, the money hurts, but it's the years too. It's not just the 35 million per year, but it's 7 years. And
right.
You look at you try to figure out, okay, 7-year contract, years 6 and 7 aren't going to be great. Strasburg has had an effect years 6 and 7 in the first 2 years of the deal when you're supposed to be getting 80% value from that contract. And they've got 4 more years after this, that albatross hanging around their necks.
Yeah, no, I mean, I wouldn't have made that deal. It's easy for, I'm not just saying the 7-year part would have bothered me.
Yeah.
Right.
Again, I've never been a baseball GM, so maybe that's what they felt like they had to do because he's coming off the MVP and et cetera, et cetera. But 7 years, and to Rob Woodfork's point, that the injury history would make me nervous about 7 years.
Right, and that's the thing. It's like if you want to reward him
right.
and say, hey, we'll give you a big money contract for 2 years or whatever that is, that's a nice thank you for the World Series MVP and all of that. But 7 years, man, that hurts.
All right. By the way, Rob, good use of the word plausible. Do you have a, speaking of rhymes with plausible, do you have an audible, or was that your audible?
That was my audible. That was my audible.
All right. My audible Baltimore Washington bid is going to be successful. We will have World Cup games in 2026. A shame that FedEx is such a dump and they can't play there, but it's going to be at M&T Bank Stadium, and Washington will have the Fan Fest on the mall. 1 million people will show up. It's going to be a party like no other. I still remember 1994 RFK walking out before we had cell phone cameras, before we had cell phones, for goodness sakes, and seeing a Norwegian fan with a Viking hat consoling a Mexican fan with a sombrero after Norway upset Mexico. That's the kind of snapshots you get at a World Cup. It brings the world together, and no other event would put a Norwegian and a Mexican in that situation where they're friends in sport like the World Cup. All right.
And I tell you, Dave, I will say I was working at RFK at that time. They did concessions when that World Cup was there, and that was my first kind of introduction to it. I mean, that was something else.
Yeah, no, there's something else. And by the way, George is still living off that concession money because the World Cup in 1994.
He was a minor selling beer. Of course, he's still living off that.
I know. Well, that's a whole other story that we will investigate next week on the DC Sports Huddle.
We got to go.
We got to go. This is the DC Sports Huddle. It's presented by MGM National Harbor. Time to change the game at Bet MGM Sports.
Break.